What's up, y'all? I'm back out here at the range bright and early on this cool sunny morning. It's starting out a little bit chilly this morning, but it's supposed to get up into the mid 80s with some fairly low humidity, so ought to be a good day to get some testing done. I've got us a few interesting things planned for today, and we're gonna start it out with some more of that physics-defying Sim-X ammo, but this time in 45 ACP. So I've got the jelly contraption ready to roll with a couple of chronos and 2 fresh blocks of gel. First test of the day, so of course you get that really nice clear picture what happens. Heavy clothing barrier up front like always with the layer of denim, fleece, and 2 layers of cotton t-shirt. And once again, what we got here is some more of this Sim-X ammo, the Sim-X Defensecore 45 ACP. Now y'all know I just tested the 9mm of this stuff. If you're not familiar, it's actually like a gooey core. A lot of people in the comments of the last people called it a big snot projectile, and that's about what it looks like. And once it's in the gel here, they claim it's a solid proprietary polymer type core that has the characteristics of a non-Newtonian fluid. So just really a bunch of marketing mumbo jumbo if you ask me, because as far as I'm concerned, it had absolutely terrible performance in the 9mm. But I picked these up at the same time, so there wasn't no sense in not testing the 45 ACP. Now this one is a little bit heavier. This one's a 72 grain, where the 9, I believe it was a 45. 72 grain, 1825 plus feet per second they're claiming. That would give you 532 foot-pounds of energy. So it is decent energy. I mean, it's good energy for a 45 ACP, but it's only a 72 grain projectile. We can exceed that energy with some of the 185 plus P plus stuff, or the plus P stuff I've tested lately, and still have great penetration, great expansion, and that heavy chunk of lead. Here's a look at your cartridge, brass case there. Now they are incredibly light, obviously, because it's a 72 grain projectile. Got a copper alloy jacket there around that just completely gooey interior core. Now they don't list any kind of test barrel length with that ballistic info, so we've got a couple different barrel lengths here as usual. I've got the full-size Rock Island Armory 1911 with the 5-inch barrel, and then we've got the G30 here with the roughly 3.8-inch barrel. So I would say hopefully we see some good stuff from this, but I really don't expect it, and I really don't have any hope that we will. Let's get it all set up and see if it can prove me wrong. All right, let's see what these big boogers can do, y'all. I'm gonna do a 5-round average from each barrel length, starting with this 1911 first. Now, if things go according to plan, you're gonna see multiple readings from this lab radar. The large numbers right here at the muzzle, and then you've got 5 across the bottom. The first one there is set for 3 yards, which is roughly where the gel is here at 10 feet, and then the others are set for 10, 15, 25, and 50 yards. Now, I'm saying if things go according to plan, because y'all know if you watch that 9mm test, this thing has an incredibly hard time reading these for whatever, or it did with the 9. I think it's just maybe the muzzle blast, and it's the really light, kind of really copper colored, light colored projectile, but we'll see what happens here. I'm gonna run 5, and we just gonna get how many we get. Hopefully we get at least a couple of them. Let's see what happens. 1825 is what we're looking for. This thing should be non-existent as far as it is. 1818. 1818 again. We didn't get one there. I knew our luck was running out. Let me let this blast kind of calm down. 1792 and 1820, so fairly close to the 1825, but it definitely wasn't 1825 plus. Let's check out this average. All right, so our 5-round average right there was 1812 feet per second. We did have a high up at 1820, so our extreme spread 29, standard deviation 13.7. I would say you have to give them credit for the velocity being where it's supposed to be. You know, you got to take into account temperature, elevation, environmental conditions, all that jazz. So 1812 right here, you know, we already know what this stuff's gonna do in the gel. I'm hoping it doesn't go all to pieces as bad as that 9mm did, but I suspect it's going to. Let's get it reset and see what the G30 does. All right, let's see what we get out of the shorter barrel. We may have a little more problem on this one just because we're probably gonna have a little more blast, but let's see what happens here. I'm gonna try to not get too close. Yeah, I was afraid of that. Let's try it again here. Let me move up. No. We might not get no readings on this. Let's get a little closer. I think close is not good, but we'll try. Yeah, we may not get anything on this one, y'all. Let me get further away. We may have to just hope the optical chrono does its thing and get a reading there, y'all. Let me try one more. You know, this radar I've talked about in the past, all these radars, they have different ranges when you go from, you know, a smaller stuff to the larger full-size stuff, and the cutoff's right at 1600, so I've got it up in the rifle range. So if surely this isn't dropping below 16. We'll find out on the optical chrono. I got one more chance here, but I don't think we're gonna get anything out of this, y'all. Yeah, we didn't get anything out of that one, unfortunately, so nothing to really compare against right here. Hopefully I do get at least a reading on the optical chrono. Maybe I'll send a few if we don't get one from the jail round. But all this being said, we already know what the deal is. I almost didn't even test this stuff, but again, I already had it, so I figured I might as well. Let's get all this stuff reset, and y'all know what time it is. All right, y'all, it's Snot Rocket Jelly time. I'm gonna put one from each barrel length into the gel, starting with this 1911. Again, we already know what we're gonna see. This thing is going all two pieces. The 9mm went like 3.5, 4 inches, I think, max. So I expect about the same right here. Hopefully we get a reading on this chrono. It really don't matter much for this one, but hopefully on the G30 we do. All right, perfectly placed. Looks about like the 9mm did. Let me go check it out. All right, pretty much what we saw from the 9mm, although this one didn't go all to pieces as bad as that 9. It looks like it kept some bigger chunks. So let's see what this G30 does. I expect this gonna probably be about the same. All right, looks like a good one again as far as placement. Let's go check these things out. All right, let's take a look at this slimy stuff down here, y'all. Pretty much what I expected to see down here. Now, y'all probably noticed we did get a reading from the optical chrono with this G30, and as you saw, it was 1660, 1661. That totally explains why we didn't get any readings on the radar, because like I mentioned, you have to choose a range on these radar chronos, and 16 is the cutoff for the lower range versus the high. So this was probably dipping right at 16 or a little bit below on those radar rounds. That's why I use both kind. You know, redundancy is key for sure. But anyway, let's look at these rounds right here. On the top, that's the 1911. As you can see, it comes in immediate fragmentation. I mean, all the pieces. You got some jacket going this way, a bunch of jacket, and it looks like the large bulk of the gooey inside is back there at the back. I don't think the goo came apart at all on this 1911 round, which is pretty interesting to see. Now, down below that, well, as far as I didn't mention too, the penetration, I mean, you see it. That's about 4.5 inches right there, maybe 5 inches this time, but 4.5, 5 inches. Down here below that, the G30, now this one definitely had more fragmentation. It's more like we saw out of the 9mm, all two pieces. You can see the jacket just completely peeled open right there. That's very interesting looking. You got a big chunk of the core here and a couple of smaller chunks of the core here, and then you had something go out the side here and smack down there. I would say that was jacket. It could have been a little bit of the core too. I can't find any of it laying on the ground. There's basically zero chance I'm gonna find that. But let's measure and see how far they went. As far as the 1911 on the top, this furthest piece is actually out to 7 inches. This one in the front is back to like 5 3/4. So, I mean, you can see, you get a little bit of it that goes out to 6, 7 here, it looks like. And then, you know, still you way back here as far as most of the energy transfer, that's within the first 2 to 3 inches. The G30 now, the furthest piece of it is what went out the side right there, and that's right at 5 3/4. So again, between, I would say this stuff is between 5 and 7 inches depending on how it fragments. And then here's your close look. As you can see, I mean, just a total mess. On the top 1911, you can see the piece of jacket, and then if you go look in the back, you can see, I'll go show you from above too. There's the bulk of your core. I think that might be every bit of the core on that 1911. But then the G30 down here, let me get you some sunlight. The G30, you can see, I mean, that thing went all to pieces. That's more like we saw out of the 9mm. And then looking from above here, you can see how far that 1911 would split this time. It split pretty far out. That piece went a little further than that piece. Down at the bottom again, there's your G30. All right, let's check out what we got left of these projectiles, y'all. This right here is from what I pulled from the G30. You can see there's the bulk of your slime ball right there, and then you got some in this piece here. Now I left a couple little pieces and some jacket, and then this is the 1911. This is actually the entire piece of that core. That's the entire core right there. There's no more left in there, and then I pulled this was stuck to it. So pretty much just like the 9mm, this one definitely didn't come apart like the 9mm. Sticky stuff, I described it as like taffy. That's kind of what it feels like, but it's a lot stickier and like slimier, wet feeling, and it's got an odd smell to it. It's got like a weird chemically smell, kind of like a raw soapy type of smell, if y'all know what that is. But let's get us a few measurements on it. This is kind of hard to do and not really that valuable, I guess, but we'll do all these pieces from the G30 first. That right there is looking at 56.6, so they started at 72. Obviously there's a good bit left in there, and we lost some out of the gel. And in this here, I actually want to measure, since we got the entire core, I want to do that separate. So that's 13.0 grains. So that's what your core is with this stuff, 13.0 grains. So if we leave that, we'll put this little piece here back on. And then we're up to 37.8. So again, obviously I left some pieces in here. You can see there and back there. And then as far as measuring this stuff, again, it's kind of pointless, but I mean, I guess I could measure this big old chunk of jacket. You'd know what you had if this was the round you sent. I mean, that right there is 1.37 inches right there. So big old chunk of jacket, 0.42 right there. I mean, this chunk here, again, like I mentioned before, this really doesn't even mean anything because I can make it whatever size I want by just squishing it, but that's about 0.47 across. Same thing with this piece. I mean, I can give you a measurement here of 5.5 and then maybe this way of like 4.5, but it's so squishy, you can see I can just squish it down to whatever I want it to be. But there you go, y'all, the Sim-X Defensecore, this time in 45 ACP. My thoughts about it in 45 ACP are pretty much the same as my thoughts were in 9mm. Absolutely no way could you convince me to carry this stuff. No way, no how, under any type of circumstances, in any conditions, for any purposes. I mean, we can sit here and try to come up with some weird, obscure reason to carry this stuff, but even in those weird, obscure cases, there are far better choices out there that give you that same performance that you might need in that weird situation and do it better. So again, as far as I'm concerned, there ain't no way I would personally carry this stuff. They do also make it in 40, but unless some of y'all out there are really wanting to see that, I'll probably just pass on that since I hadn't even picked it up yet. All right, y'all, I think I'm gonna call it right there for a slimy start to this day of testing. Again, I already knew what to expect from this stuff just based on what we saw from the 9mm. There was no way it was gonna be that different. I mean, it didn't go all to pieces as much as the 9. That's probably just because it was slower and heavier, so you got bigger chunks, but it still basically behaved in the same way. Very little penetration, immediate energy transfer within like 1 or 2 inches, and then you got those fragments that went to wherever they felt like going to with that gooey core. But I've basically said all there is to say as far as how I feel about this ammo. Let me know down in the comments what y'all think about it. Those of y'all who run 45 ACP or 9 or any caliber really, have you got any of this stuff right here? After seeing the performance, is there any scenario where you feel like it would be better to carry than something else? Let me know down in the comments what your thoughts are. A quick reminder again, if you're doing any shopping, to hit up those affiliate links in the video description. Anything you pick up after checking those links out helps the channel, so I really do appreciate that. Big thanks once again to all my Range Gang members and every single one of y'all for supporting the channel. I've got a couple more tests planned for out here today that's pretty much guaranteed to be better than this right here, so make sure you stay tuned. And in the meantime, stay safe, stay prepared, and I'll see you soon.